Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little black subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that black subscribe button. Really does help our audience grow, really does help our channel grow, really does help and mean more than you could possibly know. So go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet 50 on any game, get 250 in free bets. Thank you again to Betfred. Thank you again to you. Now, here is the video that you came here for. And I want to talk about the topic that is just a never-ending, always evolving conversation in college sports. No, thankfully, we're not talking about realignment, although I guess in theory we might be to end the show. But instead, what I want to talk about is those three magic letters, NIL. NIL, ever-evolving, constant. It is on everybody's mind. Everybody's trying to separate fact from fiction, what's the truth, and figure out both where this thing is and where it's going. You know how I know we're trying to still figure it out? Because Nick Saban, yes, the head coach of Alabama football, was literally meeting with Congress on Tuesday to try to explain to them why the importance of having national across-the-board legislation. Now, I'm not going to talk about that because it sounds really boring. Frankly, might be a little bit over your boy's head. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a congressman. I'm not this. I'm not that. Surprise, surprise. But what I will say is I have seen two very interesting stories over the last couple days that have made me start to think and made me start to wonder if the NIL bubble might be about to burst. If NIL as we know it, where it's just a cash grab, everybody's donating everything they can to make sure their school is competitive, if that era is about to come to an end, and if we are about to see a different era going forward? I think the answer is yes, and there are two different stories that have kind of come out back to back that make me realize it. And to explain the stories, what I want to do is I want to go back to the first couple days of NIL in the summer of 2021. If you remember, July 1st, 2021, that was when NIL was just a thing. It went from can't pay, college athletes can't take a free cheeseburger to pay them, whatever. We can't stop you. And so it's evolved since then. But before all the stuff that we know now, the collectives, quarterbacks making millions of dollars allegedly out of high school, Texas A&M, what they're accused, whatever, every story that you've heard about NIL. You go back to those early days, everybody was trying to figure it out. And there were two very interesting stories that came out back then that have come to a conclusion over the last couple weeks. The first one, I remember talking about this, or I remember at least writing about it at Aaron Torres Online. It involved BYU football. And BYU football on August 12th, 2021, because I looked it up before I did this segment, they came to an agreement with a company, a local company called Built Brands, which is kind of a power bar, protein bar company, in which every single player at BYU was going to get an NIL deal. And it was a cause for celebration, and everybody's yelling and screaming in the facility and all that good stuff. By the way, good for the players. Get your check. You deserve it. Or, if somebody wants to pay you, if you learn anything from the Live Golf conversation, I'm a capitalist. Somebody wants to pay you something, take the money as long as you're comfortable, whatever. So I bring it up because that was one of the first huge NIL deals and across the board, and this is great, and everybody's getting a cut of the pie and whatever. Well, I bring it up because there have been some interesting developments since then. One, to start this football season, so 2022, so last fall, it went from everybody's getting paid to BYU players will now get a percentage, 15% of all proceeds of one specific bar that was, whatever. And so why I bring it up is because over the last 3 to 4, probably about 10 days, there has been multiple reports out of Utah that BYU players are not getting paid. And they've put up social media posts and everybody's mad. And the owner of the company has had to come out and say, listen, I'm going to give you guys a little bit extra this month. But I think the exact words that he used were, I'm upset and hurt by these accusations. But it's clear that there's a big disconnect between BYU football, the owner of the company, and it's clear that they don't feel like they're getting paid and they're not getting their end of the bargain. Why that's interesting is because it comes on the heels of a very similar situation at Michigan State. This was another thing that happened right at the onset of NIL. There was a company owned by a Michigan State alum who we're going to talk about in a minute. The company is called United Wholesale Mortgage. And at the start of NIL, the fall of 2021, they put out a deal where all Michigan State football players and men's basketball players were going to enter into an agreement where for some small social media posts, they could earn up to $700 a month. Great deal for the players. Shout out to them. Make your money, whatever. Again, the story evolved this fall when women's basketball and women's volleyball were given the same deal. Post this, post that, you get up to $700 a month. Why do I bring it up? Well, this was kind of the impetus for the entire segment that I'm doing right now, because on Tuesday, United Wholesale Mortgage announced that they are ending their partnership with Michigan State. Just like that, $700 that was in your pocket yesterday is out today. Now, this one's a little bit different. I'll try to be quick. But United Wholesale Mortgage is owned by a Michigan State alum named Matt Ishbia. And if that name sounds familiar, it is because he is the dude that just recently paid $4 billion for the Phoenix Suns and the Phoenix Mercury. And so he's claiming that the NBA or someone in pro sports basically feels like it's a conflict of interest for him to be paying college students while also paying NBA players. Now, I would argue, if he cared about Michigan, I would argue that if he wanted to and if he was financially able to, he could probably continue the relationship with football, with volleyball, with other sports. I understand where it'd be a conflict of interest for basketball. But I bring it up because I get it. He has other financial responsibilities. But you look at the evolution. You look at these two stories essentially either ending or not in a good place at the same week. And it really is making me start to think that the bubble of NIL money is really about to burst. Now, to be clear, I don't think everybody's going broke tomorrow. But what I do think is starting to happen, this is kind of the thesis that I want to get to, is first off, the first year and a half, 2 years, everybody's just trying to figure out what NIL is, how it works. And again, we started with like the one-off deals where you show up here and you sign this and you get $500. And then it evolved into kind of these team-wide deals, the ones that I just talked about. And then the collectives got involved and it has continued to evolve from there. Why I bring it up, though, is because I do think these two specific stories, to me, are a sign of where NIL is going to come and where it's going to go. And I believe we're getting to a point where I think we're going to have a little bit of a class system when it comes to NIL. Now, to be clear, I don't think we're ever going back to the days where like you read stories about players that can't get a hamburger on a Saturday night. Those days are done. But I do think these companies are starting to get smarter. I think they're starting to realize value. I think they're starting to spend their money wiser. And I think we're going to look at NIL a little bit different over the next couple of years. Like I said, I think we're heading towards a system where there will be classes of athletes in a locker room. And that's like the pros, right? NFL, quarterback gets this, O-line gets that, corners get this, and then down the list, whatever. This guy gets the least amount of money, probably the running back. But I bring it up because the way I see this kind of going in college, and I think these two stories are reflective of that, is as follows. I think there's going to be the elite of the elite of the elite that everybody knows that gets huge money. Like a Caleb Williams this year or Bryce Young last year. Everybody knows who they are, won the Heisman Trophy, played in front of tens of millions of fans. And those guys are going to be very well taken care of. They're going to have great agencies behind them. They're going to have senior people negotiating high leverage deals for them. I can tell you right now, I heard some stuff about Caleb Williams over these last couple of weeks. Nothing illegal. This is the NIL world. But that guy is living very good, and he should. He's more high profile than probably most NFL players at this point, and some NFL quarterbacks. Not all, but some. From there, that's where I think it starts to get interesting. I think what we're going to see and what we're already starting to see is the best players on good teams that the local people know will be taken care of by collectives, right? Like it's interesting. I don't think Caleb Williams is like USC's collective doesn't have to worry about Caleb Williams because Caleb Williams has probably a deal with Beats by Dre and this company and that company and whatever. It's the same across the board. UConn's most high-profile athlete is probably Paige Beckers, the most prominent women's basketball player in America, maybe outside of Angel Reese. Well, Paige Beckers, she has agents, so she's all set. What I think that next tier is going to be is those star players that are locally known, and that's who the collectives are going to take care of. So you look at, I'm trying to think of in college football, right? You know, like I'm trying to think, so okay, Penn State. Penn State has a star running back named Nick Singleton, rushed for 1,000 yards as a true freshman last year. I don't know that the average fan knows Nick Singleton, and I don't know that the big brands, the Beats by Dre, the whatever, are going to want to work with him. But Penn State knows his value in that community, and I think he's the type of guy that is going to be taken care of so he doesn't enter the transfer portal. If you want to go to basketball, maybe a Donovan Clingan, the UConn freshman star. Those guys are going to be very well taken care of. But then after that, I think that's where the money's going to dry up. And I think these two stories this week are very indicative of that. And the reason being is pretty straightforward. First off, there isn't like an unlimited supply of money, even at the biggest schools, the best programs, whatever. You look at, I'll give you a quick example. I was talking to a buddy of mine who covers a major SEC program. Not going to tell you which one, not going to tell you what buddy, but you can figure it out. There's like 4 or 5 that are just a different class of program than everybody else. And he was telling me that he's a golfing buddy with one of the biggest boosters the school has, a guy that in his words, he doesn't quite have $1 billion with a B, but he's pretty darn close. And what my buddy was telling me was like, dude, Torres, you would not believe this guy gets hit up nonstop every single day about something. Maybe not every single day, but you get the point. It's about NIL. It's about facilities. It's about resources. It's about this. It's about that. We need this. We need that. We need new this. And our defensive coordinator's, going to go somewhere else. And his buddy's like, dude, I love my school. I want to help. But even with me, there's a limit to what I can do. And so you have that element, which is what I think happened at BYU and what I think happened at Michigan State. Like the Michigan State guy's just like, I just paid $4 billion for something else. I can't be dropping cash on this random, volleyball player. Sure, she's great. And that's where I think this is also going as well. Is I think at the beginning of NIL, it was the noble, cool thing to do. To just, I'm gonna make sure that every last guy on that football team gets at least something. Even the smallest level walk-ons. And I'm gonna make sure that this non-scholar, this Olympic sport. And what I think everybody is realizing is it's like any other business. Nobility is cool. Actually getting a return on your investment is even better. There's a great saying in the movie The Wolf of Wall Street, there's no nobility in poverty. There's no nobility in paying, the starting quarterback the same as the walk-on tight end. And that's where this is going, in my opinion. It sounded great for Michigan State, BYU, fill in the blank, to take care of every guy. But it doesn't really make sense. I did some quick back of the envelope math on the Michigan State situation. If every Michigan State football player, basketball player, women's basketball player, and volleyball player was getting $700 a month, that's like $10 million a year. And if you got it, that's awesome. But for $10 million a year, you can probably get the 2 or 3 most prominent Michigan State athletes, could pay them $150K, get the same return on investment for a fraction of the cost. And maybe it's not $150K. Maybe it's bigger. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's that. But these two stories to me really do seem to indicate, I think we're hitting a bubble in college sports with this NIL stuff. The really good players are going to get taken care of. The elite of the elite are going to have national deals. And I think if you play football at Georgia or Alabama, you're going to get